In his sex advice column, Dan Savage fleshes out a powerful moral stance of consensual, giving, safe sexual relationships. I wonder whether this moral cosmology could serve as a metaphor for relationships not just in bed, but across multiple scales of experience. I'm not saying that I'm wondering if we could just fuck everybody. I'm just talking about the possibility of applying these ethics of consensuality, generosity, and safety for which Savage fights across broader landscapes, from the intimate to the neighborly, the regional, the continental, and even on a global scale. I'm going to assume that most people watching here are cultural workers. You should be, if you're not. Our job is to be creative. Culture is a ceaseless collage. We're using ancient materials and rearranging them to fulfill our needs. You might say these are old songs. We're just remixing them and adding verses. All of these ancient materials are born out of the landscape. The pigments, the wood, the tape and cardboard, sheetrock, the fuel. All of this material comes from the land, from labor, from sacrifice. The landscape is always people too. The landscape is always people too. That's twice I said that. And pigeons are a people. At this historical moment, despite the so-called crisis, the relationships we have with the landscape, which is always people, are largely determined by industrial capitalism. The good news is that change is ceaseless. So the question I always want to pose to cultural workers is this: do you appreciate how industrial capitalism determines these relationships? Or maybe another way of asking it, or a slightly different question that I like better. Could you use your creativity to build other kinds of relationships? To me, it essentially comes down to sacrifice, which might make it a spiritual question. Who is being sacrificed, and who is making the decisions? This YouTube essay presents some images of industrial relationships to the landscape, which are typically top-down, impositional, coercive, and extractive in nature, as well as relationships that are more grassroots-powered and egalitarian, hopefully. I've tried to compile some images that show a broad scale of relationships, insinuated through one another, from the intimate to the global. But to take it to the next dimension, or another dimension, there are also examples that imply a broad temporal scale, from the immediate to the geological. Indeed, thinking and acting across these varied fields as cultural workers takes a lot of time, and that means patience. It is a cumulative, not to mention collective, process. It's better not to take it too personally, and to be brave and allow a little erosion of your ego, like indulging the kinks of a loved one. You gotta start somewhere, so we'll do the best we can with what we got, and right now we got YouTube, so let's start there.